Good morning, everyone. And as usual, we start with the mandatory housekeeping. There are no planned alarms or drills today. So if an alarm sounds, it is the real thing. And we need to make our way downstairs using only the stairs. Our muster point is out the front of the building, to the left, just past the bridge. But follow me if that happens. I'll show you exactly where it is. And just so everyone knows, you can see the cameras at the back. This session is being recorded. And the video will be available on our website shortly thereafter. With that out of the way, let me move to the business of the day. And a big warm welcome to Acita's, believe it or not, 39th Autumn National Meeting. As usual, there are a few very, very necessary thank yous. My first and always biggest thank you is to our members and our guests. I mean, without your sort of participation, your membership and attendance, there would be no point in us being here. So a very big thank you to all. Also, a very big thank you goes to our guest speakers and our subject matter experts who are sitting in the front of the room here. These guys give of their time to share their expertise and their knowledge with us. So a very, very big thank you to you guys. Something that has grown quite considerably are our regional meetings. So I'd like to say a special thank you to our regional chairs. Please keep supporting these regional events. So Ian, Nicola and Kaylee, thank you. I think you guys are doing an absolutely a brilliant job. And last but not least, a big thank you to the rest of our management committee, which includes Kevin and Anne, who's still downstairs. Our management committee has been really busy, and I was hoping I had one of those sort of scan things for you, Kevin. Well, basically, I mean, I don't know if you've seen, we've taken a cautious step into social media, something that old people like myself have struggled with for a long time, and we now have a LinkedIn page, so these are apparently all over the place. Please connect with us on LinkedIn, and if you don't understand how it works, please ask someone other than me. Okay. We do have another slide here, I'm sure. Oh, absolutely. But what has happened since we were last here? I mean, it became almost boring for me to report at each national meeting that we had a new Prime Minister. This time round, it's slightly different. I mean, we have a new Prime Minister, we have a new government, and in a few days' time, we have a new Chancellor who's going to deliver a new budget. I suppose we're all sort of a little bit concerned about what we can expect. I mean, the Prime Minister has warned that the budget will be painful, obviously laying the ground for increased taxes and saying that those with the broader shoulders are going to have to bear the heaviest version. I've always wished that I was a little bit smaller, but I don't think that's going to help. The indications are that capital gains tax could be hiked to as much as 39%. I mean, quite frightening. We are apparently being things like inheritance tax, pension, ISAs, employees' national insurance contributions, stamp duty, and dividend tax all appear to be in the crosshairs. Strangely, customs duties is something that doesn't appear to be targeted and is not being discussed in any way, and it's something that maybe we should be sort of concerned about in the future. I'm hoping that we have a little bit of time in one of the panel sessions to actually sort of touch on this, as a subject. Closer to home, HMRC has announced the permanent closure of the flexible accounting system, FAS, and that happens from tomorrow. I was actually sort of amazed at how many, it's something I've never used, but how many of our members are actually going to be impacted by that. It was also expected that safety and security declarations on imports from the EU would come into force at the end of this month, but that's now been pushed to the end of January. HMRC, and I do agree with him here, encouraging people to start submitting, those safety and security declarations earlier if possible. And I mean, let's take this advice and try and make our life a little bit easier. War in Europe and the Middle East continues to be a grave concern and does definitely have an impact on our industry. I understand that the UK-Ukraine digital trade agreement came into effect on the 1st of September, which apparently enables businesses in both countries to engage in faster and more cost-effective trade. It's something that I have not been directly involved in, so any feedback that you guys could provide in that regard would be very much appreciated. And finally, I mean, on the single trade window, there appears to have slowed down completely. I mean, HMRC acknowledges the absence of progression and the lack of engagement. I mean, this is something that we discussed in our last JCCC. I don't think it was unexpected, but I think it is still sort of a very disappointing. Let's see what we can do to try and rush these guys up a little bit. I have been sort of building up and looking for some positive news, something to look forward to. So we do have something to look forward to. And in 2025, I think it's on the 11th of June, 2025, Acita is 40 years old. I think that is quite an achievement. We are definitely planning a special celebration, and the management committee will keep you updated in that regard. But while we plan the celebration, I have an ask of the membership. Things like the UCC customs declaration system, CDS, Brexit, and the border target rating model, have all sort of been things that we've been forced to deal with. I mean, these subjects have shaped our agenda. The good thing is they've created a capability and an access for an organisation like Acita that would otherwise been incredibly difficult to achieve. And I think it's really important that we hold on to that. We need to start setting the agenda. And I'm looking for guidance from you as our members. What I want to know is what's not working for you, what's not being said, what is being ignored completely, and where can we really make a difference? We'll be reaching out to you, so please give it some thought and give us a shout with your suggestions. But it is something we are going to start trying to drive that agenda going forward. Our agenda today has unfortunately been impacted by PERDA. I know Dinesh had quite a task with this sort of backwards and forwards and not being able to get people to speak as a result. And we do have sympathy with our HMRC colleagues who are dealing with new ministers, with new policy, with new ideas, and obviously with new styles of working, with those in charge. But this isn't always bad. I mean, and it does give us the opportunity to hear from our European and industry colleagues. We will have the opportunity to hear about some EU reform and EU customs regulations. We'll get some insight on the EU's deforestation regulation and an idea on what the new government can expect from Brussels. I'm looking quite forward to that. And fear not, we have not been completely abandoned by our colleagues at HMRC. They will be providing the updates on Northern Ireland, transit policy, CDS, and Ben, I don't know what you guys are going to be talking to us about, but there is something. I think it's safety and security and technical handbook and modernising authorisations. Have I got that right? Spot on. Thank you. But I think that's enough from me, so let's dive straight into our agenda. Our first speaker, or part of our first double act speaker, has been here sort of many times before, and will be providing us with a European perspective on customs reforms and a Green Deal. Collier Mendel is joined by Michael Lusks, and they are here to enlighten and inform us. I mean, gentlemen, over to you. Can we have these microphones on? And you want another one? Huh? There we go. Yeah. I will take that away from you. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for having me again. I'm Collier Mendel. Today I brought some customs support, whom I'll introduce in a minute. And I think I don't need to introduce broadly here. I briefly say we are the provider for information and data content on global trade measures, and I think the only European company engaged in this. The other are North American corporations. And amongst our services, you may know this one. This is the successor tool in the UK for the former market access database, which is maintained by a team in the Department for Business and Trade, and we've got 3 forks of them. I think they are sitting there today here. As I know from previous events, many of you are users of this tool. If there are any complaints or criticism, please address them directly to the DBT guys, whilst I would in turn take positive feedback from you. So no, it's for those who don't know, it's the tool now in the UK if you want to know about duties, taxes, import formalities of all destination countries, and it's further extended progressively. So this is a customs support I brought. I don't know if you know Michael Lux. On the continent, he usually doesn't need to introduce himself. We call him, when he's not there, the grey eminence of European customs legislation, because he wrought, he even started his career in the European Commission building the EU tariff, which today still is the foundation, as you know, of the UK global tariff, which is kept fully in sync with the tariff still. He doesn't like to talk about it because he thinks it's not a great deal. And afterwards, he wrote a large part of the EU customs legislation with his own hand, the right one, huh? Technically, the modernized customs code, which then was recasted, as you all know, as the UCC, which went in force in 2016. After his career at the Commission, he works as a lawyer, as a trainer, and as an author, and me as a publisher also collaborates on several publications with Michael. And recently, he also went beyond customs legislation because of the evolving ESG challenges, and has recently commented on CBAM and deforestation, the most threatening ESG measures to come, or already implemented. Okay, so we have 2 parts. One is on the customs reform, as it says in the agenda, and one on the ESG measures. We nonetheless intended to start with a short news flash, like Des said, maybe some positive news. So the EU is keeping up with the UK in trade agreements. Also, Australia failed. We have one with New Zealand and Kenya recently. And I think the most interesting news in foreign trade agreements is indeed that the UK will be exceeding CPTPP, the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, as of 15 December. And all of the practical consequences as regards preferences will be duly reflected in Czech as of 15 December. So in the EU, on the continent, we do have simultaneously a small reform on origin provisions in the UCC, which is on the run. This is interesting insofar as it contains provisions to convert suppliers' declarations into data elements. So there will be no prescribed formulations. So there were no forms anyway, but the law had prescribed formulations, and this will be exchanged by data elements. So, of course, this concerns intra-EU declarations, but it's, I think, interesting from a perspective of progress here. Legislation is almost ready, and the technical parts will enter into force beginning of 26, and this is abolishment of Form A, which won't exist in the EU anymore. It's the termination of the disliked INF4 procedure and so on, and we will then have the suppliers' declarations as data elements as of 2027. So there's a large origin reform in the EU, that's the pan-Euro meat zone. There was, I would say, a lot of wrong notice about that the same rules will apply as of the next year. That's not true. We will continue to have 2 sets of rules, which makes it completely ununderstandable for normal people. So the idea is then to come to unified rules only in 2026, which I think still is, Anna doesn't believe it, me neither, which at least is the new goal. Then I think this also will be touched upon by the HMRC guys. We've got the incredible delays in the EU customs systems, including the transit procedure. Well, then on the general issues in the EU, there's a heavy discussion on being flooded by Chinese parcels. So Germany, in a way, is attacked from the bottom level, Temu, and from the top level, Chinese electric vehicles. So it goes so maybe as an illustration. The Netherlands have a population of about 60 million, I think. The EU has 500 million. 1/3 of all shipments coming to the EU goes through the Netherlands. They technically accept that they are not even able to control this anymore because of the sheer amount. And there are voices in member states claiming that any B2C operation should be prohibited if it's not with parties which are within the EU. So there mustn't be B2C shipments from traders which are not registered in the EU to just avoid all the negative impact of, well, the package flood. Something the US have been recently reacting to. As you may know, they will change the 3-2-1 provisions on low-value shipments, which won't be possible for those goods which are under the Chinese 301 duties. Well, yeah, we had, as a recent customs news, we had the anti-dumping duties against Chinese electronic vehicles, which is quite a controversy in Germany, because it's still an important market for Germany. So, but I think the question whether China is a risk or a chance gets answered practically in the moment with a clear result. Yeah, so on the news flash, we've got, like the UK, we also got a new EU government. The new commissioners being confirmed by Parliament, ideally in November. And there's a change also in the competencies because the economic security now became a part of the trade cluster, and Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič, who, interestingly enough, was responsible for the Green Deal before, may now maybe adapt some of the provisions, becoming the new Commissioner for Trade and Customs. But he already expressed his continued support for the ongoing customs reform. Michael will tell us more about in depth. And so we are at the first real subject matter of the customs reform, where we will briefly speak about these points. And maybe just as an intro, there was, so when you want to reform something, it is good to speak to wise persons. So the Commission formed a wise person group, which tailed its proposals and which then were reflected by a recast, which was presented already in May last year. Parliament had corresponding hearings and proposed changes in March this year. In Council, there is a discussion ongoing. We've got the three parties in the EU, the Commission, the Parliament, and the Council. And Michael, who can tell us about, has been invited recently, I think in September, to speak at the Council to reflect some of the concerns about the new legislation and certain shortcomings of this reform. And the main idea, however, is to have a complete recast of the whole customs legislation, which, if you recall, only leads back to 2016, which, however, this time shall be implemented in 3 phases, 28, 23, and 38. 32, absolutely. And the question, however, is if this is early enough to stop the Chinese package flood. So I turn over to Michael, who will tell us a little about the reform and the ideas.
Yes, first of all, I have put together here the components of the reform package. So one of the proposals is to introduce an agency which is called in the proposal an EU Customs Authority, but it will not be an additional customs authority. It will still be an agency, so that the direct contact with the taxable person or the importer will still be with the national customs administrations. Then the other big proposal is to create a European customs data hub in which all information on incoming and outgoing goods will be stored. This will then partially mean that the national clearance system for import and export will no longer be needed, so that will have a big impact on a lot of people, and I will be talking about this in a moment later. And then special rules for B2C e-commerce, and these are also a priority. And it might be that this part of the package will be advanced because the Commission is realizing that we can't wait many more years before we do anything on this. And the biggest change is the shift of responsibility today. For e-commerce, the importer is the private person importing the goods, and the idea is to shift this responsibility to the platform organizing the import, like Amazon, for example, or Shein and or Temu, and they would then be the importer and be fully liable. Nevertheless, the proposals, in my view, do not go far enough. More needs to be done, and I think also the Commission is realizing that the proposal does not go far enough. And then there are lots of changes to the customs legislation, and some of that which will have very negative consequences for a number of traders. And the last year I have been hammering on these proposals and publishing a lot in the Global Trade and Customs Journal, in Customs Clear, and other in German journals, criticizing everything, so that the Commission now sees me as an enemy. And I'm not the enemy, because all I want is that the reform works and that the details are also worked out correctly. So hopefully with time they will change their appreciation of myself. The person who tries to fix problems is not an enemy. Yeah? So next one.
But I don't know if that's the case for the UK too. Temu started direct flights with Temu planes to Belgium and Germany, so they are invading us.
Yeah, okay. So on the Customs Data Hub, I have here added a nice transparency from the Commission. So what's the task of the Data Hub? To perform risk analysis and other analysis. It's interoperable with other electronic systems, and it integrates the EU single window. Now, don't let yourself be fooled by the term EU single window. The so-called EU single window is only a linking of the different systems which exist within the Commission in different directorates general, and they are now interoperable. So that's also why it's called single window environment, but it's not a single window. But nevertheless, to put all this together into one platform is good. And to have customs supervision is also good, but in my view this is not going far enough. So it's nice to have all the data on a platform, but then the next question is, what do you do with the data? To do risk analysis, fine, but if the platform is not also used for doing the import clearance itself, then the member states will need their IT system to maintain their IT system to do the clearance. So this is a first step for a later centralized system. So all the all the estimates of the big savings which will be made, they can be made only if in the end the member states don't need national systems, which is unfortunately under the proposal not yet the case, because it's not even clear what besides risk analysis will be done through the platform.
And we, of course, in Europe have a separate maritime single window, which is following a good example. I don't know if you know, China has multiple single windows. My personal theory is the country is too big for just one window.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So the next thing is the Commission wants to hold the importer liable for everything, and in principle that is fine. The problem is only if there is no importer, then the Commission wants to squeeze other people into the role of the importer anyway. Yeah? So to give you an example, you are doing a transit procedure, you are not able to name the importer, and then you, according to the proposal, and then you as carrier, you are the first one who arrives in the EU, you are then in the shoes of the importer, and you are then, according to the Commission ideas, liable if the goods are non-compliant. I'm fighting this very hard because I'm saying, well, transit is transit, and now it shouldn't be aligned on an import. That is something which, in my view, is totally wrong. And even from the UK, you can lobby against that because we have NCTS, and the consequence for you is if you don't know the name of the importer, not you as a transit operator, but as a carrier, you are then responsible for everything with regard to the compliance of the goods, and not only the taxes and duties, which will of course remain. Yeah, then one of the other changes is the self-calculation of duties. At least in Germany, it's the national system which calculates the duties. So in future, you will be obliged to calculate them yourself if you are importer and if you don't use a service supplier. So you need then also up-to-date information on the duties on the day of release. So that's something which is often overlooked, that is also a cost factor if you have to calculate the duties, because you can't go every time into the nice system which was just described by Koljo to find out, what is the duty, because you want to do it in an automated way and not ask every time, what's the duty today? Yeah? So all cost factors. Then again, ensure compliance with the requirements of non-customs legislation. There are around about 300. Now this is limited to those applied by the customs authorities, but we don't know which are the ones, and so it would be wise to ask the Commission, well, you have now made this list of 300 regulations which impact import and export. Now tell us which are the ones which are applied by the customs authorities, because in that case we as importer have to comply with them. So it's a big gray area. And then there is customs representation. And the Commission thought they have found a genius way of holding always someone responsible. And if the guy is established outside the EU, it's the indirect customs representative. So the indirect customs representatives accept, of course, the fiscal responsibility, but they don't want to be held liable for non-compliance of goods coming from China and then be charged because someone was hurt by a hairdryer, and then the indirect customs representative is responsible. In my view and in the view of the customs representatives, this is totally wrong. And we in Kleckert, I work together with Kleckert, the European Federation of Customs Representatives and Freight Forwarders. We fight this very much to find a different solution. For example, that in e-commerce, either the company must be established in the EU. That's our preferred option. And the second best option is that there is a possibility to name someone else who then takes this responsibility besides the customs representative, and that's something on which you can support CLECAT also with doing lobbying via the UK government.
Because if you think this through, you will technically even have the contradiction that goods are in free circulation from a customs perspective, but from a prohibitions and restrictions perspective, they are not, because the indirect representative remains accountable for that. So he can technically never close its books. Huh? So this is why you sold your customs agency, supposedly.
Yeah, then another thing is the replacement of the AOC by the trust and check trader. I deliberately say AOC because the AOS for security, that is to remain because there are agreements with third countries. So it was not possible to replace him too. And for me, it's a marketing gimmick not to call that person AO anymore, but to call it trust and check trader. And okay, some things change there. And the biggest change is, in order to have this status, you must have a real-time tracking and logistics system which shows you at every moment where the goods are. So that is of course costly because you have to invest in systems which allow you to have the data and to transmit this data to the data hub. So many people will not be able to fulfill this requirement. So either they are then they can no longer be AO, or they must invest. And the other thing is the Commission wants to limit that to importers and exporters. So if you are a freight forwarder, then and you are not acting as indirect customs representative, then you are no longer AO. So there's a lot of opposition against that idea. And already the Parliament has now said no, besides the trust and check trader, there should also be an AO. But now, of course, we would have to clarify what's the difference between the AO and the trust and check trader. And that's a bit in the open. We, from the lobbying side, we are saying, well, everything we have today we want to keep, which is simplified declarations, entry in the declarant's records. We want to keep centralized clearance, all these things which the Commission wants to abolish. So we are fighting hard to keep these things. And the future will show how far we will get in the lobbying. And the lobbying should be done on three levels with the national governments in the EU, in the Council, if possible. I mean, I was so fortunate to be able to speak in front of the Council, and then the Parliament also. With the Commission, it's very difficult because the Commission just wants to get its proposal through. That's its main interest. So they are no longer interested in improving things. They just want to make sure it's adopted, and then they say, okay, and any missing things or anything which is wrong, we can do via the Delegated and Implementing Act. But that is wrong because we have seen that with CBAM. Where the trade federations didn't pay enough attention to the regulation, and suddenly they are stuck. And now when we are saying, yeah, but we want this changed, for example, that the indirect customs representative is not necessarily the CBAM declarant, they say, yeah, we understand you, it's a good idea, but unfortunately we are now bound by the Council and Parliament regulation. And the same will happen here. If you don't fight wrong things from the outset, then it will be in the Council and Parliament regulation, and then the Commission will say, yes, you are right, would have been better to do it another way. But unfortunately now we are stuck, and I see this as a real danger.
The positive thing is, Michael, when we do have the TNC and the AO, you can have two logos on your letterhead, which leads to increased credibility.
Okay, but you need to fulfill both, and if you are a freight forwarder, you can only be one. If we manage to maintain the AO, but there I'm quite hopeful since we managed to convince the Parliament. Yeah, then on e-commerce, again, I would say that in general, the proposals from the Commission on a high level, in general, they're all good. The problem is always the detail, and that's what we should bear in mind. So also the idea of the buckets is very good to say, look, very simple, we create 5 buckets with different duty rates, and you don't have to do all the details, checking what's the right duty rate. You say, okay, I'm a 0 bucket, or I'm in a 12% bucket, and then you make your simplified declaration. Okay, but now come the many buts. One of the buts is, but for the security declaration, nevertheless, you have to declare the 6 digits HS code. So what's the help of simple buckets if you need the 6-digit code anyway? The next but is, yeah, but this does not apply to everything. If there are harmonized excise duties, only harmonized ones. So if it's for let's say alcohol, then that's covered. If it's for the German coffee tax, it's not covered. So there you could circumvent the German coffee tax by that, unless the Germans find a way around. And then the next one is iron and steel products. You wonder why people buying B2C will buy a lot of iron and steel products, and why are they excluded?
You can buy everything at Temu.
Yeah, right, but okay, but they are excluded. And then the worst is goods subject to trade defense duties. I give you an example so that you understand the consequence. So you buy a nice, expensive porcelain plate from the US, but maybe you didn't think of the fact that porcelain plates, if they are from China, there is an anti-dumping duty on them. So that means, though, that you buy it from the US, since this is not distinguishing according to origin, you are now out. And you have to check every time, does there happen to be, for my good, an anti-dumping duty? And in order to find that out, what do you have to do? You have to go to the 8 or 10 digits to find this out. So on the one hand, you say, well, only the chapter of the tariff is enough. But on the other hand, for the exclusion, you have to go to the 8 or 10 digits. So what's the help? So my counter proposal in the council was, look, make exclusions on the level of the 6 digits, which you have to declare anyway, and say, okay, but this doesn't apply for that. That's a simple system. But what is proposed there is not a simple system.
But maybe to emphasize this means indeed scrapping the low-value shipments completely. Yeah? So it goes to 0 or technically 1 cent. Huh? So as the answer to the low-value shipment problem, that's principally giving up the idea.
Yeah, okay, and then something positive to end on this with a positive remark. Today, the import one-stop shop is only for goods up to a value of 150 euro. Now it is proposed to go beyond that. That's a good idea, so the upper limit will disappear. Okay, customs representation. My next point, there are also the customs representatives are very concerned. I have mentioned it already, that they will be concerned, the importer or exporter, with the full liability if they act as indirect representative. They can act as indirect representative both for people established in the EU and outside the EU, but if it's outside the EU, then they must act as indirect representative. So this is not well received by the profession. And the AO status also they can use only if they act as indirect representative. So Okay, and the next one, we don't know yet what the Commission will do, but the determination of the conditions under which customs representatives may provide their services in the customs territory of the Union. So that will probably mean what are the minimum requirements for being for acting as a customs representative. So it will mean in countries like Spain, Portugal and Greece that the strict conditions will be loosened. In those countries you have to have university studies and a special exam, whereas in countries like Germany there is no requirement whatsoever. And surprisingly, even in Germany, where the conditions will be tighter, nobody is protesting, maybe because they haven't understood what this will mean, because you might then have to pass an examination, which in principle is good, but of course it will shake the profession if suddenly all these people who are doing the job for 10, 20 years are no longer qualified. So I'm assuming that there will be a grandfather clause, which is saying if you have been doing this for 10 years, you can continue doing it. But the moment you increase the conditions for access to a profession, then you are excluding certain people. Yeah, and now comes the next part.
Okay, so nowadays I think we can differentiate our field into old compliance, which is customs and export control and maybe sanctions, and new compliance, which is the ESG measures, which are evolving. And there was a latest poll amongst entrepreneurs in Germany, and bureaucracy is seen as the most or the biggest obstacle for getting out of the recession we are actually in Germany, and this is further increasing definitely. It goes back a while, therefore a short timeline at the beginning. The ESG measures, of course, have not just come into the world with the last Commission, and the goals, I think, are undisputed, even in this audience of traders. And it's just a question how, similarly to what you've just described in customs legislation, with which measures those goals are achieved. So we had the Paris Agreement, and based not only on that, but also on that, the European Green Deal with a specific climate program, the Fit for 55, and also a circular economy action plan, and also with the last Commission, a social part. This was an economy that works for people. This is about forced labor and CSDDD. And of course, this is in a union of nations, also having national programs on top of it. So this is just an overview. So Arne will tell us, I think, today about UK CBAM, and maybe Arne, you may also tell us continent people, if this just is this the same in the UK? Do you all also have all this stuff? Because this is the threatening thing. So we have and. Maybe just to go a step back, as I said, we will have a new commission, and they've in a way accepted that this has become an issue for industry. So they said there will be a new focus on industry policy, and the Green Deal shall become a part of the new industry policy. So in a way, accepting the difficulties of operators with that. Technically, the legislative trains all are on the track and will result in all these measures to establish. And as Michael said, if those have not been adapted before, also by lobbying or so, it can be that operators are really hit with the let's say, original measures, although they have been rethought in the meantime. And technically, we see it at deforestation, which Michael will tell us in a moment, will be delayed for a year in the EU because it's simply not practicable. So, and the main issue here is, so we will briefly touch upon CBAM and the deforestation as the most challenging one in the moment, but the main issue here is all these measures have come or will come in parallel. They all go with organization and reporting obligations, and apparently the legislator has not synchronized these measures. So it's now a burden on the companies, and large corporations will be hit by all of these measures. EY is nodding. It's indeed that now the companies have the burden to address what the legislator has not done by synchronizing the measures. So the way really is to see by which measures am I actually affected, and how do I organize my internal structures and reporting in a way that I don't have to set up a dedicated team for each of the measures, but try to address them with a unified approach. So this was just for reasons of completeness. It really goes back to no, that's a typo. Huh? It's 1st January 2012. So this should illustrate that oh no, sorry. The US legislation was from 2012. The EU followed in 21. Oh, it's right. So this was the first one, conflict minerals, which was only addressing a very limited portfolio of products. So it introduced, however, this type of legislation, which then was in a way broadened by the CBAM and deforestation, which in fact do affect a lot of companies because the product portfolios are so big. And CBAM will at a later point address all products for which there is the emissions trading system. And deforestation, we did it in our company to just take the codes and put them down on the end lines in the tariffs, and it's 800 somewhat end lines. So it's really a lot of product. You don't see it. And even I'm a publisher by training. This means we buy paper, which is a EUDR commodity, and we sell books, which also is a EUDR commodity. So we are technically affected by now recording and distributing the charges of paper and where they come from. So at least the relation to their corresponding declarations. Michael, you've been commenting on deforestation. Maybe a short summary on the state of play.
Yeah, okay. So people are now happy that they have 12 months more time. If they are a larger company, then it's 30th of December next year, and if they are a small company, then it will be 30th of June of the following year. But in reality, even if you are a small company and you are selling then to a bigger company which puts the goods on the market, then you must transfer the information on where the goods come from and the geolocation of the place where the products were grown, so that in reality the small ones they are only relieved from the need of posting a due diligence statement on the Commission IT system, but the information they must still pass on to the trader who puts the goods on the market, so that this is only a partial advantage. The main advantage anyway is if you import from a country which is placed as low risk, because then the due diligence obligations are less, and you don't have to minimize risks. But unfortunately, the Commission hasn't published the list of countries from which you can import goods easily. And I think one of the reasons, there are two reasons for the delay. I mean, the Commission is doing good public relations, saying, oh, we are going to help the traders, and say, oh, you get a year more. But the reality is different. the Commission was under extreme pressure from third countries. Even in the United Nations, the EU was criticized for imposing its own rules on the production countries. So there was a fierce criticism of the Commission. That was one thing. And the second thing, the Commission was not able to make this list of the low-risk countries which we need, so that you as importer, you know what are my due diligence obligations. It's quite a disaster, and that's typical for planning of EU legislation. You put in ambitious deadlines, which then cannot be kept even by the Commission itself.
And this means technically, Michael said I must not say this here, but I will inadvertently do. This means the status of the UK in the moment, in the absence of a country list, is exactly the same as of Brazil.
Yeah.
And the UK, by the way, is hit by these measures like any other third country, and by CBAM too. And while some countries are excluded from the CBAM obligations because they are part of the transmission trading system, the UK, even with its own CBAM, I suppose Arne will elaborate on this, will only get a rebate on, or at least reduced payments, maybe to zero, but it won't be relieved from the obligations because it cannot be part of the ETS. So
deforestation, no.
I spoke of CBAM. So and in deforestation, no, it's just that the UK. So I don't know the UK deforestation situation, but maybe it will lead to a lower middle risk.
It's also bad. Who knows? I have friends in Austria who are very worried because this is not only on import, this is also on export. So if you want to export wood or furniture, then you are also covered, and you need a due diligence statement. Yeah.
I can, by the way, recommend Michael as a real deforestation expert because he owns a small forest close to Brussels.
Okay, but I don't export. Yeah. Okay, so since we are getting close to the time, I will now move to the next one. Yeah, carbon border adjustment mechanism. It works differently than deforestation, but in either case, it's always linked with an import prohibition. So you know the GATT and the WTO says don't restrict imports by quantitative restrictions or total restriction, work with money. Let people pay something additional. But no, the EU does the opposite. It says if you don't do this, you can't import. So in CBAM, it's if you are not an authorized CBAM declarant, you can't import. In deforestation, it is if you haven't provided a due diligence statement, you can't import. So this is the way it works, unfortunately, and that is much more painful, including for freight forwarders. They arrive with a product. They are not informed that the necessary work has not been done. There is no CBAM declarant. There has been no due diligence statement, and then the products cannot be imported. In either case, you either stay then in a customs warehouse, and in the worst case, you have to send the products back. So it is even for the freight forwarding industry, it is important to check with the future importer, has all the paperwork been done, or am I afterwards stuck at the border, or I have to find a customs warehouse? So there are additional things to be taken into account. And since we are close to the end, I suggest that we use the last 5 minutes for questions and answers. Is there are there any questions on these topics? Yes, please.
Can we just grab a microphone so that it's picked up on the recording?
Yeah.
Grab another one.
Yeah. Okay. We need only one now.
Thanks.
Michael, going back to the EU reforms and the process through the legislation, if we go back to the UCC, which was introduced in 2016, by now, all of the systems should be in place. But as we well know, some of them aren't yet and some of them are still ongoing. Now, the changes for the reforms announced in 2023 include the EU Customs Hub, etc. The timings appeared optimistic at the time, so as to start from 2028 for the e-commerce going through. Earlier this year, the EU Parliament's committee recommended bringing forward some of those timings to 2026. Yeah. Now, at this meeting, the last one of these meetings earlier this year, Yves Milan suggested that he thought by the end of 2025 it would take to get all the legislation through. Do you see any difference to that timescale, and how do you think that would affect the European Parliament's revised times?
Yeah, okay. I mean, the European Parliament's revised times are totally unrealistic, yep. And because even if they put it in the legislation, it will not work. I mean, we have seen it with the UCC, where the timelines had to be postponed 2 times. And even the timeline end of 25 will not be met. For example, for centralized clearance, it will not work. There are also enormous problems right now with the automated export system, with transit. And okay, the new line of the Commission is now, well, we have met all the deadlines, but the member states didn't make it. But of course, the Commission is not the end of pipe. There are the member states which have to adjust, plus there are the traders. And what often happens is that the traders are the end of pipe, and they then get 1 or 2 days to adjust. And that is not realistic. There must always be a realistic roll over time. But I think in the Council, people will ask for more realistic things. And what I said earlier is we have to split this. We have to tackle now e-commerce. We have to do something urgently there, and then the rest can follow. And my idea is to create a data hub for e-commerce and say, okay, now we work on that, and then we can also see how reliable is it. The Commission absolutely doesn't want this. Why? Because if it is adopted, they say, look, there is no way back. You want to have national systems? No, there is no way back. You have accepted that there will be an EU system, and even if the EU system fails in e-commerce, they will tinker as long as necessary. So in the end, they can say, okay, now it works. And then, in theory, the national systems have already been abolished. I mean, people will be careful and not to do this, but the ideas are very simple. Let's put it like that, in order to create pressure. The pressure is there, and the idea of the data hub as such is the right one. I mean, nobody disputes that, but one of the questions is the following: what happens if the data hub is down and then nobody can import? And so far today, if the German system is down, then you can import in the Netherlands and their system is working. And how can we ensure that the system will never be down? Nobody knows that. And if we test this with the e-commerce data hub, and we say now, okay, it's working 2 or 3 years, it went never down, then we will get the confidence that also a system for everything else will work. And I think we have a confidence problem. People don't trust the things which are being done by the Commission, and the member states will really work according to plan, because we have seen so many times that things didn't work as promised. And the Commission now needs to earn this confidence yet.
Yeah, unfortunately, the ICS2 system is not a brilliant example at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, the idea is good. The idea is good.
Yep.
The practical contradiction at the moment is that there is, I think, a common sense in that there has to be done something about e-commerce and things have to be brought forward, and the Commission in a way bundles it with the rest of the stuff, which will take years. And this means we have a accepted constant violation of customs and prohibitions and restriction laws, and nothing is done about it. I think that's the idea of bringing things forward. But this practically will only work if things are separated, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, any more questions? Yeah.
Thank you. Hello. You mentioned that the EUDR will be delayed, but to my understanding, it's still in a proposal phase that needs to be voted on. Could you just clarify whether,
Yes.
or is it just you're personally sure that it will be?
No. So the council has already a common position that it will be delayed. So the only thing missing now is the parliament. But time running by, they will have no choice but to accept it now, because we can't live in a legal limbo, which we have if by 30th of December nothing is adopted. But I wouldn't exclude that happens if the parliament is a bit difficult on that, but now it has been announced. The council has already announced it. The council has publicly announced it. Yeah.
Hey, Arnie here.
Yeah.
Hi. I wanted to ask your view on the changing strategy or priorities of the European Commission, the new incoming Commission. So now that we have an industrial green strategy, or there's more focus on competitiveness, do you think that Mr. Sefcovic will now move away from the Green Deal and take into consideration the need for competitiveness and the need for growth rather than the Green Deal ambition? Or do you think CBAM will continue as is despite the massive opposition from EU industry? You ask the CLICUT member or anyone really. So is EUDR, is ESG, is CBAM going to stay as is now that the Commission has a new industrial green strategy?
This, Arne, brings me to one thing we haven't mentioned. There is a slight change in CBAM policies and so forth at the Commission last month or the month before. The first time practically accepted that it's impossible to get the corresponding data from the suppliers by saying if you can prove your engagement in this question, this may allow you to use standard values, something which was predicted before. And as just a moment, as to your general question, Arne, I think what you correctly refer to is the political will to do exactly what you have said. But I personally don't see how these, with all of the legislation being established and will be established only in the next years, and also with deforestation, the mention is, yes, we will delay it for 1 year as a council position, but we won't change a word in it because this means we have to reopen the legislative process. So my personal opinion is they have created something they won't be able to stop for the next year, for the next years, unless they really do a fundamental change. But an industrial Green Deal still is a Green Deal, in my opinion. Michael.
Yeah, I share this view. I mean, there is a small thing on which CLICUT is fighting on CBAM. That is, instead of the indirect customs representative, someone else can be the authorized CBAM declarant. So the guys in DG Taxud agree with us that was a mistake. But now they are saying, well, but it's in the regulation, and if the regulation is not reopened, the Commission can't do it. I mean, what the Commission in part is doing is tolerating breaches of the legislation, and they partially even put it into their questions and answers. Yes, you can do this and that, though the legal text exactly says the opposite. So we may find such things. But it is unlikely that now all these packages which have already been adopted will now be reopened, and then we are in a gray area, which is great for customs consultants like myself to help people around the rules. but in part it's not even legal, including not providing exact data, though in future it will be possible to take standard data. I mean, that's another stupid thing. During the transitional phase, at the end, you must have actual data. That's what the regulation says. And when you are in the final phase, then you will be allowed to use standard data. Why do you make the transitional phase more difficult than the final phase? Well, the Commission says yes, but we need real data in order to be able to determine the standard data. But that's an interest of the Commission. So the Commission uses its own interest to impose things on the economic operator to be able to fulfill its own obligations. Okay, which, by the way, it has proposed itself. Okay.
We can call the new approach legal flexibility.
Yeah. Yeah, any more questions? There's one more.
But there's intervene at any time. We can do this in the plenary.
No, I think just two more questions and then we can. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. It was very insightful. I just wanted to ask around, obviously bringing forward anything around e-commerce and tackling the issues that we have with Temu and the like. And what do you expect might be brought forward? Is it what we would expect to see in the longer term for sort of EU reform, or is it some kind of interim measure? How quickly might that be? And what kind of things do you think they'll do to mitigate the Temu issues?
Well, I mean, the problem is unresolved, and the Commission thought by making people pay a bit more duty, the problem is solved. Of course, the problem is not solved by that, and by holding the importer responsible doesn't solve that problem either. What is needed is legislation which makes the supplier or the person who puts the goods into free circulation responsible for everything which happens with the product. And that we don't have. In the customs legislation, we have only obligations with regard to a fiscal nature, but we don't say if the client now gets hurt, who deals with it. And these rules are non-existent. So there is something needed which goes much beyond customs legislation. Customs legislation cannot solve these problems, and the customs officials cannot solve this either. They can't control millions of packages and sort those out which are dangerous, because the Commission always thought this is a money problem. They talk about the fiscal gap, all the money the member states and the Commission is losing, but in reality it's a safety and security gap that people get non-compliant products and nobody is preventing them. So it's this mind of the customs official. I must make sure that the money comes in, the right money, and this is not a money problem. It's a safety and security, and we have no tools available for the moment to solve that, and that would need to be addressed.
The only practical solution would really be to have the trader being established in the union and held fully accountable for the product. Something the US now starts to implement. But in the EU we have a problem you in the UK should have overcome technically. You have German politicians blaming Brussels for the situation, at the same time doing nothing about it in Brussels. So yeah, it's a pending problem, but unfortunately there apparently isn't a quick solution. But well, it's a member state thing too. Dutch customs authorities strongly advocate for those changes because they, as I said in the beginning, they practically admit they can't handle it anymore technically.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was really informative. I mean, I think when I started out, I was just worried about the budget, but you've given us a hell of a lot more to worry about. So thank you very much. Our next speaker is from Lithuania. She's a customs broker with more than 15 years experience. She's the co-founder and director of CustomsClear.net and the Customs and Trade, which is a customs and trade compliance knowledge platform. She's also director of the Lithuanian Customs Practitioners Association. Enrika New-Yorker, I think I've got that right, is going to talk to us a bit about EU customs regulations and collaboration amongst trade unions. Welcome.
I hope you can hear me. The most amazing are the fax numbers. We are talking about cutting-edge technology, EU data hub, and we still use fax. So, Kali, I will send you a fax. Oh, great, great. Yeah, I do believe all the Germans have. Okay, so actually both speakers covered a lot what I planned to cover, but I think with this 20 minutes presentation, I will bring the flavor from the eastern region of Europe, and as I say, the region which is the border of the democratic world with Russia and Belarus. Lithuania has borders with both of them. So I will overview briefly a short period of customs regulations. I think it is important for practitioners to understand that we are flooded not only by the parcels, we are flooded also with the legal changes, legal news, and we are drowning in information. And also taking your point, what Michael Luke said, that what's use of the data in the data hub, the customs data hub, if you don't know how to use it. But the other question is, what's use of the data that is not quality data, because we don't manage the quality, we don't manage the knowledge. So probably these are the main points. And also I will try to elaborate a little bit how we can overcome the complexity. And myself, as already Tess has introduced, why I can speak about this, because I am CEO and co-founder of CustomsClear.net, the Customs and Trade Compliance Knowledge Platform, and we focus on EU and UK. And every week I'm sitting analyzing the EU legal changes and putting them together, which go out with the newsletter. Therefore, I decided for this presentation to pick only 3 weeks to demonstrate how much has changed. And as you see, I have counted even that there were 47 news and changes related to the EU regulations. I picked not all of them. I picked 4 topics. First of all, restrictive measures, then tariff classification, then IT systems, and product-related news. I call them this way. We can talk about sustainability and other news. And the second part of my presentation will be about overcoming complexity, and we will take a look at the technology and also about the role of associations in helping managing the flood of legislation and drowning in information. So 3 weeks of October passed. What are the news in the EU related to the restrictive measures? The main one is that there was the list, the EU control list of dual-use items updated. And this has been done because of the changes in the international regimes. Now, the question, what does it mean for UK traders, for UK businesses? First of all, the international regimes have changed. So you will have or have already changes in the UK legislation. And secondly, the EU rules, the control list is about exports, which means imports into UK, and also about transit of goods. In addition to that, to the EU rules, the second news is about an overview of national restrictions in the scope of that regulation. So national restrictions, what do they say? They say that we have also national rules. So the EU level rules then might be 27 rules in addition to those. So we must keep in mind because we must comply with them as well. The next news adds to the complexity by saying that guidelines for exporters with regard to non-listed cyber surveillance items has been released. Non-listed is the keyword here. it doesn't mean that your good, if it is not included in the list, it is not controlled. If the good can be used for example, violations of human rights, the good will be controlled and you can't export it or other restrictions apply. And final comment, so I listed here all the news, but due to time constraints, I will not comment on each of them. Final comment that I wanted to make, because sometimes I see in practice, I see the world through customs brokers' lens, as it was said, don't fully understand what the list of sanctioned persons mean, and into the list more and more persons are added, and it is not only about trade in goods, it is about also services. And for example, Lithuania has a border with Belarus. On Belarus side, there is Beltamosh service, a customs brokerage agency which is sanctioned. You cannot buy services from that customs agency because it is on the sanctioned list. You cannot pay money. So much about restrictive measures, and now why I picked this topic as the very first topic to start with, because obviously this is the topic one in our region, the challenge also number one, and you see how it looks like. I compared the year 2021, which is the year of establishing vice persons group, and they delivered the report in 2022, and this year. On the map, you see the red dot. This is one of the border crossings that is closed with Russia. And Belarus, there are border crossings also closed, and you see 2021, there was a normal flow of goods through that border, and today we see that there are barriers built against war machines, and nobody can cross, and also we see the barriers are being built in the shallow parts of the river so that the war machines cannot cross, and the Russian side are displaying Z letter to the democratic world. So it looks really quite scary when we think, but this is the reality we have. Therefore, if your goods are transported via Lithuania and other border countries, you may face strict controls, even when the goods are not sanctioned. And you can be questioned and must provide additional documents and proofs. And the statistics of our customs shows that in the first half of the year, 20,000 shipments were not allowed to be brought out of the EU. And also record fines are being imposed. In August alone, our customs announced that 13 million, more than 13 million euros fine was imposed on a company which exported vehicles in breach of sanctions. And plus, we must keep in mind that the customs has the power to confiscate the goods. The goods were confiscated. Another fine, more than 1 million fine, was imposed on an importing company which imported goods from sanctioned Russian companies. So the breaches can have serious financial consequences. And final slide on the restrictive measures is that our region faced also for quite a long time sanctions shopping challenge. That means that if you cannot cross the Lithuanian border, maybe you will try to cross Latvian border. So this is a lesser challenge or not a challenge anymore, because Lithuania initiated a contract with other countries to align the control measures on sanctions. And we signed this contract with Latvia, Estonia, Poland, Finland, and Croatia. What is important for UK companies to know that, and here we come to the national restrictions. So Lithuania had released laws that imposing strict requirements on the goods. For example, manufacturer's declaration. UK exporter, if the goods are to be transited through Russia, can be asked to provide manufacturer's declaration, which states that the manufacturer knows about the transit and is sure that the goods will not stay in Russia. And this has been adopted by all the countries you see on the list, and more requirements as well were adopted and harmonized. Let's go to the next topic, relevant to everyone and very important and challenging as well, tariff classification. 3 weeks, what were the news here? First of all, the EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement. European EU released their position on the aspect that product-specific rules of origin are to be modified from HS 2017 to HS 2022. What does it say as practitioners? It says that today we face the challenge. We declare the goods to customs applying HS 2022 version, but when we want to use the preferential rules of origin, we have to classify goods back to 27 version of the HS and then to check the respective rules. So this challenge will be solved in the future, but until the next version of HS goes out. Talking about HS, an important development or an important event in the classification world are always the sessions, WCO sessions of the HS committee, and the session was held recently, 74th one, and the results, 23 amendments to the HS 2028 nomenclature, so looking into the future. And for today, what is relevant, that 7 amendments to the HS 2022 explanatory notes have been made, 21 new classification opinions released, 2 classification opinions deleted, and 18 new classification decisions made. What does it mean? It means that in the UK, the application and practice has to be aligned accordingly, and in the EU. So how EU aligns this? EU every year releases a communication with which it says that binding tariff information decisions which are not aligned with the new opinions and explanatory notes and so must be revoked. What does it mean for UK traders? It means that if your partner in the EU, your customer probably, has to change the EU code, the classification code of the good, the tariffs can change, restrictions, requirements can change, which can have an impact on the sales of the goods and procurement of the goods. And finally, you see also a few EU classification regulations to goods were classified. Now I was also asked to comment a little bit on IT systems. This topic has been covered quite extensively by my colleagues who spoke before. But again, 3 weeks of October, there were some news as well. Before commenting on those news from October, I just would like to draw your attention that if you would like to read in more detail what is the progress, there is annual progress report released and published each year. In September, a new report was published. On the slide, you see the link. And in total, there are 17 projects of IT systems. On the slide, you see only the trans-European projects. And the very first one, also related to October update, is about the centralized clearance for import system, which the system is really great. Why? Because you can lodge customs declaration in your country, despite the fact that the goods are in another country, so centralized clearance. And this system has been joined in October by Croatia, and Lithuania is also in that system. Of course, the challenge is that as long as not all member states apply the system is not fully functional. And from Lithuanian perspective, I just can comment that I don't know yet a company which has tried this out. The next system on which there are some news is the NCTS. Speakers before me already commented about the delays. So, and I saw the news from Irish Customs that the system on EU level was said to be implemented the 5th phase on 2nd December. but Irish Customs informed that they are extending the migration window until the end of the year. So, and this is not, this is a common to extend this with the implementation of the systems. We also see that delays are anticipated with implementation of guarantee management systems versions. About the import control system, the advanced cargo information, the third version has started as planned. We will see how it will go. It is reported in that report. A good news and what we enjoyed really in Lithuania at least is implementation of T2L documents, conversion from paper to the electronic system. In Lithuania it has been done, the proof of union status system has been implemented and it went smooth and we use the electronic documents now. I can't report the same about the export system. Unfortunately, in Lithuania, the implementation was very unfortunate, I would say, because 4 days we couldn't lodge customs declaration, and which was a huge problem also for e-commerce and for everybody. And after that, we had also issues with correcting data in the customs declarations. And as you see, there are also high risk of delays, but for the UK traders, what is to be considered when you are dealing with EU, the systems can be also a challenge. They can lead to delays in the supply chain and also to some challenges after that. The fourth and the final topic, overviewing those 3 weeks of October, are some product-related news. And the one is already covered. Youth deforestation law has been postponed by 12 months. We have discussed this already. I found 2 more developments very interesting also to draw your attention. When shipping the goods, how much change there is and how different aspects are changing. For example, we were talking about the restrictions and mentioned cybersecurity requirements, cybersecurity in general. And when we think about the cybersecurity, we think probably about certain goods. But in fact, when you read the text here on the slide, you will see that the requirements for products with digital elements and the new law on cybersecurity requirements for products with digital elements applies to products such as home cameras, fridges, TVs, toys, and so on. So a broad spectrum of goods is impacted. And finally, the circular economy is changing the way we work and we do things, and is changing also the liability. EU has issued product liability rules, which are now in line with circular economy, and they set out that if the product was repaired, for example, in a third country, for example, in UK, the company which repaired that product carries the liability for its conformity. So much of the news. If you would wish to read more, because I covered not all the 47 news, please click on the link on the slide, or you can also subscribe to the platform, sign up. You will receive free newsletter with all those news, 5 articles for free, also free version of the Customs Compliance and Risk Management Journal, and also you can buy paid services. Not everything is for free, but quite a lot, so try this out. Now, moving to the second part of the presentation, it is about the complexity. I said at the beginning that we are flooded not only with the parcels, but also with the legislation, the new laws, the updates constant. And indeed, the legal complexity is unprecedented. We are drowning in information. And these are the words I cited by Frank Heeman, who is author of the book and is representative of the Netherlands Customs. And our Customs, Lithuanian Customs General Director recently said in the meeting that why there are so many challenges for traders, because customs are struggling with HR challenges, the lack of HR is increasing, and he also noted that data quality in customs declarations is decreasing. And this is a problem, big problem, how we want to solve this. this was covered by the previous presentation. We want to introduce the EU Customs Data Hub to get the data from all the stakeholders, right? To have the transparency, to ensure the consistency, which is really correct approach, and we all agree. But there is always but in life. I would like to touch the knowledge topic. And already a century ago, talking about the cutting-edge technology, at that time, Wilbur Wright said that it is possible to fly without motors, but not without knowledge and skill. So I think this aspect, knowledge and skill, is under considered and still needs a lot of attention in all areas related to customs, non-customs regulations, and overall in the scope of the reforms which are going in the EU and in the UK. And what can we do? What can we do from two perspectives? One perspective, considering technology. Technology is helping a lot and can help also not only to gather the data, but also to get the knowledge. And I would like briefly to introduce the project that we are working on. We are creating, with the co-funding of the European Union, conversational AI assistant. I'm not saying chatbot because it is much more advanced. And on this slide, you see a picture from our project with Lithuanian Customs that we do. With Lithuanian Customs, and overall this is the issue and challenge with all the customs website, I would say so. Maybe you know some exceptions. When you go on the website, you see many sections. When you go into particular section, you see more sections. And in Lithuanian website, at least when you get to the right section, you find a list of PDF documents to download. One PDF document, 100 pages, and that's it where you end. So acknowledging this problem, our customs said that they would like to engage with us in this project. And what we do, we gather all the information from the customs website, so you can simply ask the question and get the information from only the customs website, from a reliable source. And the best thing of that is that the information which is available only in Lithuanian language, you can ask the assistant in English language. As you see on the slide, you ask, how do I get ERI? The system recognizes and answers in the English language. If you ask in German language, it will answer in German. If you will ask in Dutch or French, it will answer respectively. So no cost of translations and all the information there. So I think what we are missing also from the government perspective, the approach that we don't need to provide more information, the links to the legislation. We need to provide the answers and find ways to simply do that. And if you are interested in this project, you can register picoco.ai. There is a link, and you will follow up the developments. And the final aspect, the very important one, is what role associations can play in overcoming the challenge of getting knowledge, sharing information. I think that associations play a crucial role. We're sharing now the views, the information. We will share during the breaks and will network. This way we broaden our views. This way we form common opinion. Legislators and governments are listening, hearing, and forming their views. So I think this can have a really big impact on the environment in that we operate. And the Lithuanian Customs Practitioners Association is not only talking about that, but we are cooperating with Acita. I'm today here informally still. We are members of Europro, and Acita representatives were also invited into one of the meetings to be here. And as you see on the slide, LCPA is member of INCO, International Network of Customs Universities, CONFAT, the Confederation of Customs Brokers Associations, and we have cooperation memorandums with the Ukraine EBA Association, European Business Association, with Bulgaria, with Ireland, with Azerbaijan, and with Armenia. The challenge here is when you think about all the associations, okay, so we have those agreements, what we do now, how we cooperate and exchange, and platforms must be created. Therefore, I would like to use this occasion to invite you next year, all our partners with whom we collaborate, to Customs Ecosystems Conference, which will take place in Vilnius. The dates are on the slide, so please note them, and more information will be shared in the course of this year, until the end of this year. Ecosystems. The final slide is dedicated to elaborate on this word. Why we have chosen this is not that popular or often used when we talk about customs. The ecosystem, customs and trade compliance ecosystem, is about bringing all the stakeholders together. We are used to think customs one side, traders another side, academia the third side. In fact, we believe that everybody should cooperate together. And in this conference, we will bring namely customs, academia, businesses, associations, startups together to exchange knowledge and views. So the ecosystem is about all stakeholders working together for a sustainable present and future. And referring to the EU customs reform, I would like to rephrase the words and say that for putting more union in democratic world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Enrica? You covered it all. As you know, I mean, Acita is almost 40 years old, which means we've got a couple of old members, and for that reason we've put a 10-minute comfort break into the mornings. Yeah, absolutely. So we've got 10 minutes to stretch our legs and get back here. So thanks very much. Dailies.